Nate Boyer, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast. It's been a dream of mine to have you on for quite a few years since I saw you speak many years ago at the USA Football Conference at the NFL Combine, and here you are. Finally, we caught you on the road, but we caught you.
Yep, I'm here. I'm here. No, it's good to see you again, brother, and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah,
While the
well, you're
combine is happening right now, I know this will probably play a little later, but it's
yeah.
happening.
It's happening, and I remember going to that and watching it, and just what a cool experience it was for sure. To see it. Did you do the combine? Were you,
No,
yeah, you just went through as an
yeah,
undrafted
I
free
think
agent?
I literally think at every combine they have one, maybe two long snappers
Yeah,
invited,
yeah,
and they're literally there to snap the ball to the punters because they're actually being evaluated a little bit more.
gotcha.
Um, I think that's about it. But yeah, I did not get a combine invite, but that's okay.
That's okay.
It was the next year. It was the year after I signed as an undrafted free agent, and didn't last long. But I got to play a bit at the next level, and then that following year was, I believe it was 16, right?
Yeah,
2016.
that sounds correct. I was trying to figure
Yeah.
that out back in my calendar, but I mean, how does a guy, right? So for people who don't know your story, how does someone who never played high school football end up with the Seattle Seahawks? And
Long snapping.
with a lot of stuff in between.
Yeah, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Was a huge 49ers fan from you know from 3 years old, really.
Yeah.
They won their second Super Bowl that season, and I vaguely remember it, but I remember enough of it. And then they went on to win three more in my childhood. I played soccer first, and then I played little league baseball, and then I played basketball. And uh, at least growing up there in the Bay at the time in the 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, I guess, there wasn't, it didn't seem like much of an emphasis on youth football. I didn't even really know about it. I mean, I knew it existed, but like I didn't know anybody that played.
Mhm.
As a kid, everyone was playing baseball and basketball uh, when I was a little kid. And then, by the time I got to middle school, uh, I was kind of a late bloomer, so I was a little bit smaller, and I was a good baseball player, good basketball player, but not great. I was like always trying, fighting to maintain my starting spot. And I just remember thinking, well, if I try and play football now, what if I lose the momentum I've gained? What if I lose that starting spot? So I just didn't do it. Get to high school, I'm even more so like wanting to play, um, but still just kind of the fear of you know riding the bench, I guess, or
Mhm.
uh, kind of losing momentum
Mhm.
on the other things, and I just didn't do it, and I regretted it for years.
Mhm.
And I ended up, after high school, I moved down to San Diego, worked on a fishing boat for a little bit.
We
Almost.
have that in common, by the way. Well,
Oh,
we won't
really?
talk about it here, but I did that growing up in New York. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
We'll chat about that another time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you don't meet a ton of fellow
No.
deckhands. I don't know if you were a deckhand, but that's what
Yeah,
I
I
did.
was. Yep. Yep. I was.
um, so yeah, it was, San Diego. They had the charter boats going out catching tuna and albacore and all that stuff. I was doing that. Um, I had enrolled in the community college. Honestly, I'd worked out some with the basketball team. I went to a few off-season baseball practices, and I just was like not that into it at the time. I was like, man, I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. And I don't think I'm ready to go to college either. So I dropped out and just started working full time on the fishing boat. Um, took some firefighting classes, thought maybe I was going to go to firefighting school. Ended up not doing that either. Just kind of drifting. Ended up moving eventually to Los Angeles. Interested in film and TV stuff, interested in the
Mhm.
storytelling, but no idea where to start, what I actually wanted to do.
Mhm.
And so I just partied, as a
Mhm.
kid at 19, 20 years old does. And then 9/11 happened. 9/11
Mhm.
happened when I was 20. Um, and I didn't join the military right away, but it definitely got me thinking about things a little bit differently. I hadn't really thought globally in any aspect prior to that. It was just really about my country, my world, my specific interests. And that was like a shock, because a lot of people my age were joining, kind of leaving. Some of them were leaving college. Some of them were leaving good jobs and, going into the military. And I remember,
You had
hearing
Pat
about
Tillman leaving
exactly.
the NFL.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's when I saw that, I still didn't join right away, but it was like, once again, it was like, man, should I do this? Am I supposed to do, like, I hadn't genuinely considered it. I actually did meet with an Army recruiter my senior year in high school, but it was more to just scare my parents. And, I didn't really, I wasn't really committed to it. I just was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll join the Army. I'm glad I didn't at the time, because I wasn't ready and I wasn't in the right headspace. But by the time I was in my early 20s, and not only are we, in Afghanistan now, we're going to Iraq, and more people are being deployed. I eventually decided to do it, and it was on the heels of a trip I did to Africa. I went and did some relief work over in the Darfur, and it was really that time that cemented that I need to do something of service at some level for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be the only thing I do. I'm still going to have interests and all that, but I just felt in the 60 days I was over in Sudan and Chad, really in Chad on the Chadian border, across from Sudan, where all the refugee camps were. I just felt like needed, and I was doing simple work, but there was just a lot to be done, and there wasn't a ton of volunteers, and people were appreciative of the time I spent there, and they were even more appreciative that I would leave a place like America to come help them there. And I just felt we all want to feel necessary in life, and I really felt like, well, I'm for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely making a difference, and on a consistent basis, every day, every breath I take, I'm doing that. And I did kind of leave something out when I was in my early 20s too in LA. I did work with children with autism, right? I was sort of a big brother to some of them. And not that that's not fulfilling. It absolutely is. And not that that's not purposeful. But on the other side of that coin, when I wasn't doing that, I was really bad to myself. I didn't take care of my body. I didn't exercise. I didn't eat right. I partied way too much. I didn't, there wasn't balance. You know what I mean? Or maybe there was the bad kind of balance where I'm doing something that I feel really good about, and doing something that I just regret and kind of beat myself up about. So, going over there and doing that really shifted that thinking. And I was in my last week there volunteering. I got malaria. This family put me up there locally, took care of me, put a little radio by my cot, and I was listening to the play-by-play of the Second Battle of Fallujah while I was healing up. It's just like, I just knew when I came home, I'm joining the military. This is what I'm going to do. And that kind of started that chapter.
Yeah. And I mean, amazing chapter. You go become a Green Beret, I think 6 tours you did.
I did, 3 combat tours.
3 combat tours.
And Afghanistan twice. I did go 3 other places that were more like training missions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, an incredible experience. What did you take from that military experience? I mean, I think one of the things that I love about the military that I'm constantly passing on to teams is this idea that, like, what's a great teammate? What's a great, fellow soldier? What does that mean to you?
Right. Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think different teammates bring different things to the table, for sure. I'll speak first quickly on the leadership side. Like, a great leader to me, which is also should be a teammate. I think that's a distinction that's important, is like understanding that your leaders are teammates, even coaches in a sense. Obviously, they're not out there on the field playing, but like, some of the best player-coach relationships I've seen are the ones where that player genuinely feels like they can come to the coach with anything, just like they would a teammate,
Yeah.
and and that the coach is going to show up for everything, even those 6 a.m. workouts, that absolutely suck and no one wants to be there. When you see your coach there too, you're like, all right, he's in too. You know what I mean? So it's a great leader to me, who is also a great teammate, is somebody that maybe they delegate, maybe they make those final decisions, but they're right there in the trenches with you, like for all of it. And they'll pick up the smallest toothbrush and scrub the toilets. If the job is to clean the bathrooms, like they're taking the dirtiest job. You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of teammates I want to be around. Those are the kind of people I want to take a hit for, and be willing to take a bullet for on the battlefield, honestly. But like that's the people you want to play with. Those are the guys. It doesn't matter how talented. Obviously, talent helps, but talent without that kind of effort and humility, it's kind of wasted, and it's not inspiring. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me. That's the best teammate, and the most important thing in a teammate is that willingness to kind of put not only the team, but put you first. Feel like he's putting me above his own needs or her own needs. It's like we have a saying in the military, for the man on my left and right. And we can talk about various things when we do that, but it's always about the person next to you. And the best teams I've been on, and the players that I follow, and the coaches that I follow live by that.
Yeah. And I think, right, if I'm looking out for you and you're looking out for me, then your skills, the things that you do really well, maybe you're fast, you're strong, you shoot well, whatever it is, benefit me. And the things I do well benefit you. But if I'm only looking after myself, and I think the military does a pretty good job of teaching that, right? That if I look after the person on my left and my right, and they're looking after the person on their left and right, we're all good. And it's interesting. Like I grew up, my dad was a New York City firefighter, and his dad was a New York City firefighter. And it's a very similar sort of brotherhood of, and in New York City, it's a very dangerous job, and you're fighting fires all the time. You're not just sitting in the house. And I try to get that across to teams, right? Of like, if you're the most talented person and you also look out and make the others around you better, they're going to play for you. They're going to give you the ball. They have your back. They're going to let you show, and versus you have all the talent and you don't pick up the piece of trash. You're too good to pick up the cones at the end. It doesn't really play well.
Right. Yeah. Completely agree. No, completely agree. I mean, it is very similar. I mean, there's a lot of similarities in the military experience and the athlete experience. Never would I ever compare war and playing sports. Like that's, and I think anybody with enough reason understands that those are very different things. But I also don't get offended when I get it when coaches use some of that terminology, like we're going to war, and, it's a battle, and I understand why. It's it can motivate people. But just as long as everyone always understands, like that's typically not I don't think that's typically the coach's intent to say those things. But it's certainly not something I would ever consider. But when it comes to the training and the preparation and the sacrifice, very different type of sacrifice, but nonetheless, if you want to be an elite athlete, you have to sacrifice a lot. If you want to be an elite team, you're a college program, you've got a full-time job in the classroom and a full-time job on the field. Like that is a commitment. That is a huge amount of sacrifice. If you want to be good, if you want to be the best, similar to the military, like the best teams, the best soldiers and Marines and, airmen, I'll cover all of them, sailors, whatever. The best ones put a lot of time into their craft, and make sure that they don't miss workouts and they eat right and all these other things. So that stuff, I mean, that's an athlete's world,
it is
like all those things, that structure and commitment to the details.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're in the military, you talk about, you keep seeing a lot of these like University of Texas banners everywhere, and it seems to be the military's team. And so at that point you decide, I want to go to school there, and I think I'm going to play football finally. And I remember you saying at the conference, I did it, but the hardest part was they kept saying, well, send us film.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny that you remember that.
It's all stuck in my head.
Yeah. I mean, but that's true. I was in Iraq, and I was like, you know what? It was during football season. It was on TV, Armed Forces Network. They got during football season, it's nothing but football games, which is great if you're a football fan. It sucks if you're not. But so any free time we had, and keep in mind we're 9 hours ahead in Afghanistan, so it's like I'm watching Monday Night Football like 5 a.m. or something. You know what I mean? Because of the time change. But any chance I got, I was watching games, and I had a year left of my contract on that, my enlistment, my active duty enlistment. I was like, well, I'm 28 years old now. I'll be 29 next year. If I don't go to college now, I'm probably never going to go. So I better do it, because I do want to do it. I finally felt ready. But also I want to try and sow this other wild oat, and this regret I've had since I was a teenager of not playing football. I'll kick myself if I don't at least try out. Worst case, I just get cut, whatever. It's all good. At this point in my life, I don't care. When I was 13, I cared a lot about getting cut. Like, that's the last thing you want. But now I'm like that. So I started training over in Iraq. I was like running routes in the sand and trying to teach myself how to backpedal and trying to put on some weight. I weighed about 165 pounds in the Army. So I was like, well, that's not gonna work too well on the football field. So I, put some weight on, and then it was like, all right, where am I going to go? And our team sergeant. So in special forces team has 12 guys, right? 12 soldiers on the team. You got your team sergeant, and you've got your medics and your weapons and your engineers and your commo guys and your intel sergeant, your captain and all that stuff. Where our team sergeant, which is the highest enlisted on the team, he was always wearing this Longhorn hat. And I first noticed that, and then it was just like, yeah, we're going like base to base between missions, and I'm like, I'll see it in one of the gyms, someone will have some PT gear with Longhorn on it, and you walk by a barracks, and there's like a flag hanging in the window, and it's just like it was just popping up everywhere. And it's funny because like after the fact, all these A&M fans would always be like, but the A&M, we have the Corps of Cadets, it's like, we're the real. I'm like, yeah, I know. But actually, funny enough, one of their fight songs that they play is the Ballad of the Green Berets.
Oh, no hilarious. Way. There you go. Yeah.
The one game I was on the field against, I guess it was twice. I was on the field against A&M.
Yeah.
And we played out there at Kyle Field, and their band started playing the Ballad of the Green Berets. And I'm standing on the field. I'm like, I am the only Green Beret on the field. So is this for me? Because I'm wearing orange.
Yeah, that's funny.
But anyway, yeah. So I just was like, you know what? Austin, I've been to Austin once before. I had a great time. I was like, it's such a cool city. When I get back to the States, I'm going to go back out to Austin, visit the school. If I like the campus, like I'll just apply there first. That'll be my number one choice. And I come back from overseas, and sure enough, go out there, and I'm just like, this place is still great. I love it. I'd never lived in Texas, but it was like, I want to do something different anyway. And Austin is a really cool city that's just got a lot of character. I got picked up from the airport on that trip by a cab driver. This is before Uber and Lyft and everything. And he takes me to the hotel I'm staying at. And he goes, you ever been to Austin? I was like, yeah, just once, kind of passing through. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, man, great thing about Austin is all the cowboys smoke pot and all the hippies carry guns. And I was like, that's kind of funny. I'm like, that's a good, that's a good way of putting it. Like everybody kind of, they've got their opinions, but everyone kind of gets along and
meets in the middle
and figures it out. And I was like, this could work. And I head out to, it was during their spring practices. So I head out to practice and just to go watch it, and I kind of walk on and snooping around out there, and ended up talking to the strength coach. Jeff Madden was the head strength coach at the time. Mad Dog, everybody called him. And I just let him know. I was like, hey, I introduced myself. I said, I'm in the Army. I'm still in for almost a year here.
Yeah.
But when I get out, I'm going to apply to the school here and see if I can get in. I'd love to try, come try out for the team. He was like, yeah, well, just let me, keep me up to date on when you're thinking of coming. He just assumed I'd played high school ball, like you were saying.
Right.
And so I did. I went back. I made sure I was taking online classes. So I started them overseas, actually, so I could transfer in as a sophomore because I didn't have the best high school grades. I was like, I got to get my grades straight so I can transfer in as a sophomore. And ended up, Texas was the only place I applied. I felt pretty good after that trip. I went and met people in the admissions office, and people don't do that anymore. That's a great lesson for young people.
Is, yeah.
Whether you're trying to get into school or get a job, just go to the place and go meet the people and buy somebody
show him you can have a
coffee.
Conversation face to face and look him
Exactly.
in the eye, and yeah.
Exactly. Just get, people really respect that if you can kind of show up for stuff. So I think that definitely helped just getting me in. And I ended up finding I had one more trip in the military, one more trip to Israel, which was a training mission out there. And my mom actually got the letter in the mail at home that I'd been accepted. So she faxed me over a copy of it or whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
The journey begins.
So then you contact the football program. I'm in, I'm coming. How do I get the tryout? And they're like, send film. You're like, oh, my soccer games? Like,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, so yeah, Coach Madden, he passed me off to another individual, Ken Rucker, who was there, who worked more in the operations side. He was a former coach. And then there was also like the whole compliance part of it. I had to go through compliance. They had to make sure I was eligible because I'm 10 years older than the other freshmen. It's kind of a different situation. So I had to go through all of that with the clearinghouse, the NCAA and all that stuff. And then, there was a couple, they would shoot kind of in an email. It'd be like, right on. Yeah. If you have a rec letter from your high school coach and or film. And I just was like, look, I haven't been in high school in 10 years. I don't have any film, I mean, I wasn't lying.
Yeah, but you weren't telling the whole truth.
No, I was kind of just skirting the question, being vague and indifferent was something we were trained to learn how to do in the special forces, in the unlikely and unfortunate event if you were ever captured. It's like when you're getting questioned, just be as vague and indifferent as you can. And I definitely utilize that.
That's awesome.
And they stopped asking eventually and just said, all right, well, here's the tryout date. I'm like, yes. All right, perfect. I'm like, once I get there, I know I'm in good shape from the military, good endurance. I'm just going to go as hard as I can on everything and at all times. And there's just no way they're going to cut me. I just won't allow them. I won't give them the opportunity to cut me. So that was the mindset going on there.
That was awesome. Now, the other, and this just says that you gave a really good speech 6 years ago because I remember this, right? You tell the story and you're like, thank God I showed up and day one was conditioning. And you're like, so it's not my test of my football skills. And you told a great story about sort of, doing some running and how a couple people were giving you a hard time because how hard you were going. So I just want to cue it up for you because this story again is stuck in my head for 6 or 7 years.
Well, the Longhorns in the 2009 season they had a really good year, right? They went 12 and 1. Won the Big 12 championship. They're playing in the national championship against Bama in 2010, early 2010. And they got beat. It was a game that, Colt McCoy got knocked out of the game early on. And it was a tough one. Garrett Gilbert came in and had some really good flashes of play, and this guy never played at all, really. But we just had a few too many turnovers, a few too many balls didn't bounce our way, and they ended up losing. So this is like the first practice back after the holiday break and everything, after losing a national championship game. And these guys are, they're excited, hopeful for next year, but also pretty crushed. And they lost a lot of their stars. I mean, Jordan Shipley and Colt McCoy and some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball as well. Some of their stars were gone, and that was tough. And so we got out on the field, and Mad Dog just says, all right, we're going to start everybody up with some conditioning. We're going to run the all the skill players, which is like quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, safeties, linebackers, tight ends, receivers. I don't know if I said receivers already, but anyway, that group is going to run 6 laps around the field, and then all the O-line, D-line is going to run 4 laps around the field, right? Go. And I mean, running isn't a very specific. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and so when I heard that, I was like, I just took off in a sprint, and I'm like, I'm going to run as hard as I can, and for as long as I can, and just whatever. And I'm like lapping people because they're all slow jogging, just cruising. It's like it's the first day back. Like they're just. I think the intent of the run is just to like. It wasn't
welcome back, warm up. Yeah.
We'll just kind of warm up, and then we'll get in the weight room and do some stuff. And I took it as like, oh, it's a challenge. And but also, like I said before, I was like, well, I'm just not going to give them a reason to cut me. If they cut me, maybe it'll just be because I'm too annoying. So yeah, I take off, and none of the people on the team knew. I mean, there's other guys like me that were there that are trying out. That are kind of lumped into the bunch. We don't have the official team workout gear. We're wearing whatever our stuff. The last thing I was going to wear was anything that said like Army on it. I didn't want to I wasn't going to spotlight in that way. I was just going to spotlight in the
hard work
performance.
Yeah.
So I'm like going, and there's people talking trash, guys in the team like, hey, what do you slow down, man? What are you doing? And we get done, and we're kind of circling up, and I can see some of these guys looking at me, but I can also see in their eyes, they're kind of like, how old is this dude? Like, what is he doing here? That guy is not an 18, 19-year-old freshman. So Mad Dog circles everybody up. He knew I was in, knew I was in the Army, and he asked me how old. He's like, how old are you? I said 29. And he goes, all right, everybody. He's like, you got this old 29-year-old, man, just coming out of the Army here. And he whooped you all's butts on this thing. You're walking out there jogging like you won the national championship. You didn't win the national championship. You lost the national championship. It's like, you should be doing. And I was just like, oh boy, this is not good. Like, they're all going to hate me. And it was cool. I mean, from that moment, I was like, all right. First of all, after that, a bunch of players on the team after practice came up and were super nice and just kind of appreciative and wanted to hear more about my story. And started to make friends right then, which was cool. But also it was like, all right, if I just keep doing this every day, I might piss off some people, but I'm going to find a way on this team. And, whether it's the scout team like it was for the first year and a half or whatever, I'm going to be a part of it. And that's step one. Just make it.
Yeah. And then you want to play, and then you're like, okay, how can I play? Cause I mean, this is like no offense to you, but I don't think anyone goes, I want to be a long snapper when I grow up. Like, right. So, but it's like I think you said you talk to the coaches, like where can I play? And they're not going to be like, yeah, you're going to play linebacker. Like, you're a long snapper. There's a skill position that's, hard. And I mean, you did, and, you ended up winning the starting spot and playing a couple dozen games and tons of recognition. And next thing you know, you're in camp with the Seahawks, who has just come off the Super Bowl. So
back to back. They actually came off back-to-back Super Bowls.
Back-to-back Super Bowls. Yeah.
But I was I was a safety. I was a third string safety, and I could tell that wasn't changing. And I was a backup on like the punt block team and a backup on the kickoff team, but I wasn't starting. I just didn't have the speed. I didn't have the skill. I didn't have the size. So as hard as I went, it came down to like, we got to play the best players. I was like, all right, well, what else can I do? And I recognized that the starting long snapper was a senior, and so was the backup. So I figured, well, if I can just learn this thing, maybe I'll have a chance. And before I did that, I went to Mac Brown's office and I said, Coach, you know, I got to go overseas this year. I'm heading back to Afghanistan, but I want you to know when I come back, I'd love
Right, because
an
you were a
opportunity.
reservist still while you were in
Yeah, I was in
school,
the
right?
National
So you
Guard.
had, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was in the National Guard while I was at Texas. So I stayed
yeah.
in and I didn't have any responsibilities really during the football season, but I did some training in the spring and then I would be available to deploy in the summer.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going overseas, but I'd love to come back and have an opportunity to try out for that long snapping position. And Coach Brown goes, well, have you ever long snapped before? And I said, Coach, I never played football before I got to Texas. And he was like, I didn't know that, but he's like, all right, yeah, of course. He's like, be safe, but
Yeah.
more importantly, but when you come back, you know, you can try out for it. And you know, in his mind, he's like,
Whatever.
okay, like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I go over there. The equipment manager, Chip Robertson, let me borrow a couple footballs and take them with me. And so I just worked on it every day. And I came back and won the backup job during training camp. And then after the first game, I got an opportunity to start week 2 of that season. And that was in 2012. And I started for 3 straight years after that, which was awesome. And, you know, it was, like you said, I didn't dream of being a long snapper, but it was an important job. It's a special skill that requires a lot of consistency and like you've got to, like shooting free throws, you've got to be able to have your rhythm and routine and focus and block out all this other stuff. And I equated it to how I learned to shoot a pistol in the military. It was a lot of the similar, like sort of the mindset of it anyway. You know what I mean? And like the approach and the preparation to it.
Yeah. And no one will ever know your name unless you screw up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job.
So it is like a thankless job.
No one really wants to be. And there's a lot of thankless jobs in the military too. I was used to it. I was like, you know what? If it gets me on the field, I don't care at this point.
Who cares?
I'm just, I exhausted everything I could from the safety and slot receiver side of things. And it ain't happening.
It's not
That's
happening.
okay. That's okay.
So you go in with the Seahawks after you get into preseason. You're like, okay, I don't know how long this is gonna last. We're gonna eat it up, and then first preseason game, they hand you the American flag and say, go on out there and do that. I mean, that must have just been almost surreal to stand out there and go, like,
it was,
holy cow, national anthem.
It really was. It was, you know, in college. I got to lead the team out of the tunnel for every game with the flag. That was something that Coach Brown had us, you know, had people typically do that had a family member that served, but he hadn't, you know, he'd had one other player, Ahmad Hall, who played for him in, I think, the late 2000s or mid 2000s. And I think he was in the Marine Corps Reserves or something like that. So he had him do that every game. He was a fullback, played in the NFL for a little while as well. And he had him do that, lead the team out of the tunnel with the flag. So Mac similarly just said, why don't you're just going to do it every game for us because you're actually you're still in. And so I did that. And it was quite an honor. It was really cool to, you know, 101,000 people in the stands and you're running out there and you're nervous, but also it kind of settles you into the game in a weird way.
Yeah.
So when the Seahawks the equipment manager for the Seahawks asked if I'd like to lead the team out of the tunnel with the flag, I was super excited. I mean, I didn't know how long this thing was going to last. I was sure I was going to get cut long before we got to that first preseason game. So it just, I'm like, all right, it's game day. I'm here. I made it this far. And I run out of the, well, first of all, I'm warming up on at midfield prior to the game. And like, we're playing the Broncos and it's Peyton Manning's final season. They went on to win the Super Bowl that year, actually. And Peyton's standing there throwing balls, like warming up next to me. And I was just like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm here. And I lead the team out of the tunnel with the flag and then stand on the sidelines and they start playing the anthem. And I just started crying because I was like overwhelmed with emotion, thinking about people I'd served with and those are still overseas and those that didn't make it back and those that did make it back, but, you know, didn't feel as confident as I did that they could go chase after their dreams, you know? And it's just like all these things are kind of running through my head. And yeah, I just got real emotional. And then after the song ended, it was really cool to have like, I remember like the whole team for the most part, not the whole team, but like some of the superstars from the team, like Russell
Yeah.
Wilson and Marshawn Lynch and Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Doug Baldwin, Jimmy
Yeah.
Graham. These guys are like coming up to me,
Yeah.
uh, you know, give me a hug and just saying thank you. Richard Sherman,
Yeah.
just saying like, hey, thanks for what you did, man, and like we
Yeah.
appreciate you. And it was really cool. It's almost like they knew this was my last game.
Yeah. Maybe they did, but it was still cool.
The coach
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, we're gonna cut his ass, so like, make sure he has a good experience."
Yeah, but whatever, man. That's
Nah, it was
amazing
cool.
though. I mean, I
It was
just
great.
when you tell the story, like I get goosebumps, and I can only imagine you probably still do too. Like it's such a
Yeah,
crazy story. So yeah, so you and I met like I think like a year or whatever after that, or
right.
and then that fall, like, and I loved your story, and I think we connected on LinkedIn or something at that time. And then that fall, you write this letter to the Army Times, because that's the fall that Colin Kaepernick sits down at the national anthem. And you write this letter that kind of gets national thing, and you're like, you know, talking about what that means and how that could. And then you ended up connecting with Colin Kaepernick about this whole thing. Do you mind talking about that for a bit? Because I think it's a really important. I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard you say this is kind of one of those defining moments in your life.
yeah. I mean, when he started sitting during the anthem, it was the first couple games of the preseason there
Mhm.
in 2016, and so it's a year after I've been released. And I didn't even know what was going on until I saw all the social media, uh, you know,
Yeah, the Fuhrer or the
the
whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And this was in the middle of the 2016 election, which was one of the
yeah,
most divisive times
yeah.
in our nation's history, probably.
Right.
Not that it's gotten much better, but like,
It certainly
it
got
was,
worse that fall.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was crazy. And the I'm like, I'm reading about all these people posting about, oh, Colin Kaepernick's a traitor and he hates America and blah blah blah. What is going on here? Because I'm a Niner fan,
Hmm.
and I was like that. I was like, I don't get it. Then I read about it and it's saying, he's sitting on the bench and protesting the anthem. Why is he
Hmm.
protesting the anthem? Like,
Hmm.
what does he know about, uh, you know,
Service, or
oppression?
what that means
I
to
mean,
people.
oppression. That's what I thought. And
Yeah,
I was like,
oppression.
what does he know
Yeah,
about
yeah.
oppression? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
look at the Darfur, look at Afghanistan, Iraq.
Hmm.
Like, we don't suffer from anything here in the States. And
Hmm.
um, while it's very different here, it was also unfair of me to assume I understand what somebody else's experience is like, regardless of
Yeah,
color.
yeah,
Take
yeah,
that
yeah,
out of it.
yeah.
That was just like, everybody's got a different experience and everybody's got a different relationship to these symbols. And a lot of people feel like they don't belong. They don't feel like this country represents them in the same way. And that's how he felt. And he felt
Hmm.
like there was a promise made that wasn't being upheld. And he felt like when law enforcement officers aren't held accountable in situations where there are unarmed shooting of somebody, like
Hmm.
that's wrong and that needs to be fixed. And so this is why I'm protesting. This is why I'm
Hmm.
sitting. It's not
Hmm.
because I hate America. It's not because I'm anti-military or anything like that. It's because I want things to get better. That's what I read into once I kind of read about it. And I
Hmm.
watched him give this long interview in a locker room about it. And he actually had said that he was appreciative of people, that served in the military as well. He like
Hmm.
made a point to say that. And so at the same time, I'm getting reached out to from like CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. Like, they all want me to come on the program and probably debate why, why he's right or why he's wrong. Like, they want me to take a side and like do this whole thing. And I'm like, I just don't want to do this. It's not, I don't think it's healthy. I don't want to contribute to it, but also it's not what I actually believe. Like,
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of nuance to it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not happy. I don't want him to protest during the anthem. I don't like
yeah,
that. I mean, because those symbols are very special to me. The
yeah,
flag, I mean, that flag, I carried my best friend's casket with
yeah,
that flag draped over it,
yeah.
and when I hear the anthem, like at that game, I get emotional. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's super different, but that's my experience. And that's, those are things that I did and saw and felt. And that's not, fair to judge anybody else's experience. So I wrote this open letter through the Army Times, just sort of explaining, and to Colin, just sort of explaining, these are my experiences. This is why I feel the way I feel. But I respect what you're doing. I took the oath to defend the Constitution, which includes the First Amendment. Those are rights you're exercising. I do look forward to the day that you're inspired to stand for the anthem again. I gladly stand there with you. And I signed it off, De Oppresso Libere, which means to free the oppressed. It's the Special Forces motto. And his publicist ended up calling me like the next day. The article went out. It went really viral because a lot of sports media folks shared it, and that was kind of where it came from. And she ended up calling me and said, "Hey, Colin's got a game tomorrow in San Diego. They're playing the Chargers in their final preseason game. He's starting. It's military appreciation night. Like all this stuff's happening, and he's going to sit again, And he's like, he's like, he'd love to meet with you for the game if possible." And I was like, well, I got a little nervous because I was like, is this like a media stunt? Like, what's happening? Who is it going to be filmed or anything? She's like, no, it's nothing like that. He genuinely just wants to talk to you, kind of thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. So I go down there. I sit down with him and Eric Reed, and we share about our different backgrounds and experiences and all that. At the end of the conversation, he asked me, is there a different way that I think he can protest that's not going to offend people in the military? And I told him, look, no matter what you do, some people are going to be offended. But if you're asking my opinion, I think being alongside your teammates is important. Right now you're sitting on the bench kind of away from the group, and it's not super inspiring to me. I think if there's a way you could be along, next to your teammates, sort of embracing them in a sense, that would be powerful. Like, even though you guys don't all agree on something, you got to go out on the field and do this job together. It's a good message for the country, And he said, I hear you and I agree with you, but I committed to not standing. So, I don't know if that's possible. And I said, well, what if you took a knee instead? What if you knelt alongside your teammates?
Right, like we do when they get hurt. It's a sign of respect in a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When a player's hurt, you take a knee. When you go to propose to your future spouse, you take a knee. People take a knee to pray in church. It's very common, and it's a sign of respect. And he agreed it was actually more powerful, is what he said. I think I'm down to do that. So he did. He went and he took a knee that night. I stood next to him while the anthem played.
Yeah. There's a very famous picture of you standing next to him with your hand on your heart,
right,
showing your respect and
yeah. But I respected him too. I mean, that the only thing in that moment that felt disrespectful was the booing that I heard from the fans, and it wasn't all the fans, of course. It was very few, but I was just like, if you're so against what he's doing here, but you're more against what he's doing than you are showing that reverence you claim to have for the flag and the anthem. Like, this doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't understand that, but I guess they have the right to do that as well. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's how I felt. That's what it made me feel like as someone that fought for what those symbols.
Well, I think you were the right, regardless of where anyone listening to this falls on the issue, right? Like, I have a dad who was in the military and a firefighter and went to a lot of funerals on 9/11 and, all these sort of things. Like, I understand where people feel, and I understand where certain communities feel, about, police brutality and things like that. And I think you were the right person at the right time to sort of be like, it's not how I would do it, but I understand that you're coming from a different place. And I just think that hit, like you said, at the most divisive time in our country at this moment where, with social media, everyone's got a platform. So therefore everyone's an expert. And as we know now, and all these algorithms that just pulled us more apart and made us more angry and surrounded us with more people that believe like we do, which is where we are here in 2023. I mean, it's just, I thought that took a lot of courage from you to do that as well, because you didn't have to do that either.
I appreciate it. I was just trying to do the right thing. What I
Yeah.
thought was the right thing anyway.
Yeah. And in my small, having met you before that, going, oh, well, like Nate seemed like a pretty awesome guy who's got his stuff together and is very thoughtful. And so if this is what he thinks, maybe I could think about it a little more myself. So it did have an effect. I want to be mindful of your time because I know you're such a busy guy. But I don't want to leave here without talking about your merging vets and players, because you had
Yeah.
already started that in 2016. And I think it's such a cool project that you do. So tell our listeners about this, because I
Yeah.
think it's so important.
Yeah. We call emerging vets and players MVP for short. I co-founded it with Jay Glazer, actually right at the end of 2015, and we started our full sort of programming in 2016. But we essentially bring together combat vets and former professional athletes, and we help them find purpose and identity when they lose uniform. I myself, I got out of the military and was cut from the Seahawks in 2015. So I went from having camouflage and a jersey and like both these locker rooms and identity with this uniform and this, the brotherhood and the structure and all these things that can be a lot at times, but also you always feel sort of purposeful, and you got to show up. It matters that you show up, and you got to get up at this time. You got to eat this thing and do these, do all that stuff. So you can
here's your schedule that you've had for 20, 30, 40 years, someone telling you where to be and when to be there.
Right.
And then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's gone.
And it's tough. Like it's nice for about a month or so,
Yeah.
You're just like, all right, I'm going to get up when I want to get up and do my own thing. But we all need to feel like like I mentioned earlier, like we matter and we all want to belong. We all want to know that if we weren't around, things wouldn't operate quite so smoothly, and that we are an essential piece of the puzzle here. And so a lot of people don't feel that when they leave those worlds, and transitions are difficult for anybody in any stage of their life, athlete, veteran, not. But what's unique about the vets and athletes is both careers end pretty young, typically. I mean, I was old for both of those, like military and sports, to be 34 with it being over.
Yeah.
The typical average is probably 24,
Yeah.
And that's crazy, like very young, and you feel like you've peaked already.
Yeah.
And like, I'll never be great again. It's like, you got, 60, 70% of your life left to live. And like, that's not that, no one wants to feel like that.
Yeah.
And it's so that's a tough thing, and kind of realizing your potential, and also kind of focusing that energy into something else. It's absolutely possible, but for whatever reason, we get so fixated on, well, I only know this because this is all I did.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'll tell you what, like anybody that's operating at a high level in any industry at some point feels like an imposter. They feel like they don't belong. And I don't know. I should not be doing this job. I have way too much responsibility. Whatever. We all feel that insecurity. That's just human nature. So just recognizing that, like, yeah, you're going to have to start in the mailroom at 34 and whatever. I mean, I did an internship, an unpaid internship at a production company at 34, starting all over, making coffee and cleaning the fridge out, and like after doing all this stuff, because it was like, I know I did these things and they'll help me at some point. Like they absolutely, not just with work ethic, but like someone will recognize that I have this other unique background and story, and they'll want to help elevate me. But I still have to like show that I have a good work ethic, a good attitude, and right place, right time, right uniform, just like in sports in the military. And if I just start there with a little humility and then just work hard, things will start happening. And that's kind of what we preach at MVP. It's just like, it's all there in front of us. We just have to take a step.
And I mean, also, right, the 100,000 people cheering for you at University of Texas or in the NBA or in the NFL stadium, like, that's not real. Like that, they're not your people. Like your worth is inside yourself. Your worth does not come from them or the cheers, and it's hard, and those transitions are hard, especially the more sudden they are. You get cut, you get injured, and all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah.
It's just it's a very traumatic thing. And I can, right, so here's the athlete, and I would think as well, like, just like all those guys, the Seahawks respected you so much, like, you know, that these NFL guys meeting vets would respect them for everything that they've done and that they've brought to the table. And you would come back and they would look at these NFL guys who might have a lot of money and they're yet kind of broken inside too, and don't know what's next. And like, we're all just human beings trying to figure out the next step, trying to get through the day. So,
exactly. No, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a big time mutual respect between the two groups.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you show up at a restaurant in your camouflage, and you know, there's a good chance someone might buy you lunch.
Yeah.
You show up in anything else, they don't see you for that side of you. You're just another person.
Yeah.
And same thing with the sports, like you're saying, like the fans are all cheering you, but you walk in that arena in street clothes, good chance they don't know who you are unless you're, you know, the top 5% of the professional sports world, where
they're still asking for your pass.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's a weird thing. That's a weird thing to experience. But so we both kind of recognize that in each other, and we help each other through that transition. And that's what led to mixing that part of this experience, and like standing up this organization, this charity, and then COVID hitting and us having to shift to Zoom. And at the same time, I'm working on this film and TV dream. It was like an opportunity to tell that story was kind of the next logical thing. And so
the film is MVP.
Yeah, that's where we're at now. So we shot it in late 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It took forever to edit and do all the other stuff because we did it for very little money. And it was, one of the coolest part, actually probably the coolest part about it is beyond Michael Strahan, Howie Long, Randy Couture, Jay Glazer, Rich Eisen, Tom Arnold, all these people that are in the movie and sort of playing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not sort of playing, they literally are playing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Every veteran portrayed on screen is played by an actual veteran, which is really cool, like all the way down the line. And then most of the crew are veterans as well. And we made this thing for nothing. I mean, I'm not going to say the budget, but in movie budget world,
it's not Avatar 2.
No. It's like 0.001% of Avatar 2.
It's not even the lunch budget, right?
No, it's not even the trailer cost more, I guarantee it. Like, So, but that was the cool part, is like these people all came together to make this thing.
Yeah, it's cool because they care, because it matters.
Yeah,
it matters.
Yeah, and it was like telling the story of how MVP started, and it's about a Marine who was living in a homeless shelter and an NFL player first year out of the league, and they're both going through the same struggles and losing that uniform and trying to move forward, and they got to help each other through it. Yeah, it came out on Veterans Day. Yeah, it's like a theatrical release and through video on demand, and then Showtime ended up picking it up. So now we're on. You could still watch it on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and all these other places. You could still rent it there, but if you have a Showtime subscription or a package within your Hulu, Amazon, Paramount Plus subscription that has a Showtime element to it. I'm not sure how it all works, but you can find it. If you Google the MVP movie, it'll show you everywhere it's playing.
Yeah, and we'll put links to it in the show notes here as well.
I love it.
But it's awesome, man. Listen, thank you so much for carving out some time. I know you're on the road and everything, but your story is inspiring. I'm not the least bit surprised that all those people stepped up for that movie, because the work you're doing is awesome. And you inspired me many years ago. And so thank you finally for sharing this with our audience. Any final word from you, or just how people can connect? I know Mission 60 is business and things like that. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can just, on social media, I'm at Nate Boyer 37. Pretty much across the board there. I was the number 37 in college at Texas, so that's where that comes in. You can reach out to me there. I do have a website, nateboyer.org. Vetsandplayers.org is where you can find more on MVP. We do have we got a gala coming up in May, and we've got a bunch of other events. So even if you're not a veteran athlete, there's ways you can connect with MVP and kind of participate and support us. And we'd love to hear from you and work together.
Brilliant, man. Well, listen, safe travels to you. Keep doing your amazing
Thank you, John.
work and keep inspiring the world, Nate. We truly appreciate you being on the Way of Champions podcast.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.